There are always some in youth group who say, they sit in the back row, and I say, you have to be in at least the third row. And since the third row is blocked off in youth group, some of them went and sat down in the back row and said, you can't move us this week. And they were all smug with their situation. But we are so thankful for the Lord's leading, and I know that means we're getting started here a little bit early, but that is, of course, fine. So we are going to have a song in just a moment. We're going to get started here in just a little while. But I want to just, from the very get-go, this is so weird. I'll just be honest. Everyone's so spread out. I feel like I'm preaching in empty spaces. But I wanted to just open it up for praises as we get started, because I know when you ask for praises on Sundays, sometimes it can maybe it can feel, just because it's Sunday, it can feel a little bit like you're disrupting, and so maybe sometimes Wednesdays lend themselves better to discussion or that kind of comfort. So I wanted to just, especially since we're back on Wednesday, since we haven't had Wednesday ministries in a while, obviously. Just wanted to hear from you all, see how you're doing, and hear if there's anyone who has a praise from the last. Yes, Victor. Wow. Awesome. Great. Sweet. Yeah, having just sold a house ourselves, we know that it's a hot market right now. So that's great. Praising the Lord for that. I know just having that step over with is a huge relief. So we'll continue to pray for them and their transition. That's great. Someone else, praises from the last. How long has it been since we had a Wednesday? I think it's 11. Is it 11 weeks? 12 weeks? Too many. Way too many. Anyone else? Yeah. Great. Great. I told Brandon, I said, bro, you have natural energy on your side right now because these kids have been bored for 10 weeks. So they're just glad to be outside and seeing their friends, and so he has the perfect storm right now. Yeah, we're so thankful that we could do that. And then, so the first little while, I don't know if parents noticed this, but the first little while, Brandon and I were doing those together, and then I just eventually started handing it over to him. And so that really allowed the teenagers just to kind of gravitate to him. And I mean, we had a lot of kids on Zoom, and it was great. And he was very dedicated with the Bible studies, sending out questions ahead of time, and it was really a great thing. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Glad we're back together. All right. Well, we're going to get started with a song. We're going to sing Be Thou My Vision together, and then we are going to have our message before our prayer time like we did last week.
All my vision. Let's stand together. We'll sing verses 1, 2, and 4. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me save that thou art. Thou my best thought by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. Be thou my wisdom, thy true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, I thy true Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. High King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joys, O bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, O ruler of all. Amen. You may be seated.
All right, Psalm 4 this evening. Psalm 4. Well, where were we last week? Yeah, great job. Steve's awake. Yeah, Psalm 3 last week. And do you remember what I said was the context of Psalm 3? What's that? One more time. Yes, David fleeing from Absalom. And so someone be specific. What's the story there? Who's Absalom? Son. And what's the problem? He wants to be king. So he declared war on his dad. And you think your family is dysfunctional, right? Maybe they are, but that's very dysfunctional. Yeah, so David is fearful. Actually, we don't. I'm sure he is. We actually see that later in Psalm 56, similar context with a different response. But seemingly in Psalm 3, he is confident. He seems to be doing pretty well. Now, the reason we're starting with a context for Psalm 3 is because I actually believe it's the same context as Psalm 4. Okay, that's not an uncommon view. It's not. Remember that the original manuscripts didn't have chapters and verses; those were added later by translators. And so it is very possible that the division took place between Psalm 3 and Psalm 4, and that became tradition. It's also very possible that happened with Psalm 1 and Psalm 2. That's another common view. Less so than Psalm 3 and 4. As you'll see tonight, they go very well together. There's some repetition. He goes back to some of the same themes. But what I'm trying to say is I believe that we're dealing with the same background information here. And obviously that background information is Absalom's rebellion against his father and subsequent declaring war and trying to take over his kingdom. So what we're going to do tonight is what we've attempted to do, and it's been much harder to do online because there's really no feedback, there's no interaction unless you comment, which is great, but that has limitations as well. So what we've been trying to do is allow the Psalms to inform our prayers or guide our prayers. And that's much easier to do if we're kind of all in it together, all right? So that's what we're getting back to. So we're doing our Bible study first, hoping that it will inform our prayers and instruct and guide our prayers, and then we're getting to our praying time, okay? And that is not because I don't think you're good at praying, and there is a good way to pray and a bad way to pray. Christ talks about this, obviously. But it's not because I don't think you're good at praying. It's because we always need to be better at praying. The best people I know who have the best prayer life that I know want to be better at it. So prayer is not really one of those things that we ever master. It's kind of like humility, you know. As soon as you go, you know what, I think I've mastered humility, then people don't believe you. Right? I think I've finally got this figured out. I'm pretty good at humility. Prayer is the same way. if someone says to me, actually, I think I've got prayer figured out, then I'm going to say, then we might not have God figured out, because there's always more to be thankful for. There's always more to pray. There's always more to say. And so that's what we're doing with Psalm 3 and 4. So I want you to think of, in your mind, I want you to think of the most difficult circumstance you've ever been in with your kid. Okay? The most difficult circumstance you've ever been in with your kid. You say, well, I don't have kids. Well, then in that situation, thank the Lord that you've not had that struggle. I'm serious. Okay? Because we have struggles with our kids, but right now they're fairly minimal. Some of you have adult children, teenage children, they're growing. Even with a 2-year-old, the struggle of sin is hurtful. You see that, and you see the effects of sin. It's dangerous, and it scares you, and there's all of those things. So I want you to think of the most difficult circumstance you've ever been in with your kid. You say, well, why would you ask that? That's really personal. I ask that to show you how practical the Psalms are for your life. Because David's having an issue with his kid. It's a big issue. But he's got an issue with his son. Now, chances are your children aren't going to declare war against you for your kingdom. And if they do, you have a life I do not know about. But we've all been through circumstances with our kids. Again, mine are fairly minimal. But we have the daily battle of sin. Some of you have been through circumstances with your kids that you wept, you lost sleep at night, and you didn't just lose sleep, you lost sleep because you were weeping. Some of you are having battles with your kids, then you legitimately wonder if they're going to be okay on the other side. Some of you are in that circumstance right now. These are the kinds of stories, these are the kinds of situations that the Psalms are born out of, which is why the Psalms are so helpful for us, which is why the Psalms are so encouraging for us. Because they're meditations of praise, they're outbursts of praise in which we find deep human emotion. So we're in Psalm 4. Maybe not just take that circumstance, but maybe just take whatever circumstance you're in that's painful right now, and think about David's circumstance. He's in a cave. He's aware that enemies are pressing in around him. He's deeply hurting because this is his child. And this is what he says, Psalm 4. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O men, how shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your beds and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. You have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. Just a few basic points tonight, just by way of explanation of the passage. All right, remember we're allowing the psalm to teach us how to pray. And so just very basic points. And first of all, in verse 1, we see a plea. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. So in verse 1, we see a plea. I don't know if you've ever been in a circumstance where you felt like your prayers were not leaving the room. You felt like, doesn't matter how many times you say a certain thing or how repetitive you are or how many times you cry out to God, you're just not even sure that there's an answer. I don't think we get that impression from David, because I don't think that's what David is is expressing here. We don't get the idea that David is lacking confidence in God. I think this is just a general request for help. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. He's asking for God's help because he believes that God's help can be provided to him, will be provided to him. And there's three things I want to do here, want us to see here in this plea, or things that we should do when we're making a plea ourselves. And the verse breaks down very simply, and I think you'll see it. First of all, what does he call God? Answer me when I call, and then what's the title that he gives? O God of my righteousness. So first of all, acknowledge who he is. Acknowledge who he is. Now, this particular time, David focuses on an attribute of God that's comforting him in this time, which is what? Righteousness. Yeah, don't overthink it. Righteousness. O God of whose righteousness? My righteousness. Why would he be asking, why would righteousness be important for him right now? Important to him right now? This is meditation, what we're doing together. Because something's wrong, isn't it? What's wrong? The circumstance. Unjust situation. His son's coming after him with armies. Answer me, O God of my righteousness, the God who will make things right. Because that's who he is. He is righteous. And you can do this with attributes that you know of God. You might say, God, thank you for being sovereign. Thank you, my loving Lord. What's someone's favorite attribute of God? Anybody? I know it's hard to pick a favorite. Favorite attribute of God, yes. Omnipotent, which means he has unlimited potential. He is all-powerful. And aren't we glad that he is? So God, my all-powerful Father. And Christ is omnipotent as well, correct? Christ has all power. We've already been through John 1. We spent 7 months in it, right? What's about another one? Favorite attribute of God? What's that? He forgives. God is forgiving, and he's forgiving because he's merciful. He's forgiving because he's gracious. So God, thank you that you're so forgiving. And so what you're doing in prayer when we're praying is we're acknowledging who he is. We're not just using general phrases. Remember, one of the things that Jesus warns against in Matthew 6 is heaping up vain repetitions, is the phrase he uses to the Pharisees. And I think we need to be careful we don't do that with how we refer to God. We just keep saying God, or we just keep saying Lord because we don't know what else to say. We can talk to God about who he is. David does that. God of my righteousness. This is how he addresses him. So you can wake up every morning with your cup of coffee or your cup of tea or your Red Bull or however you start the day, and you can say, thank you, loving Lord, for giving me another day. Thank you, merciful God, that your mercies are new every morning. And today, when I sin, you will forgive me. Now, don't plan on sinning, but when you do, because we're going to sin that day, we know he will forgive us. Acknowledge who he is. Acknowledge what he's done. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Do we thank Christ? Are we as quick to thank the Lord as we are to just focus on the problem? So sometimes we're really quick to ask, but when was the last time we were thankful for him answering the request? Sometimes I think we forget common courtesy with God. If I do something for you, you may not say thank you to me. Hopefully, I'm not all offended by that. They didn't say thank you to me. I'm never helping them again. Some people are a little touchy that way. But it's common courtesy for you to say thank you. You should say thank you. Not because I might have my feelings hurt, but because it's the right thing to do. Gratitude's a good thing. But sometimes with a relationship with God, all we do is ask, 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 and ask. And then when the prayer is answered, it's like, oh, good. And we just keep going about our life. Rather than, here was the request, here was the answer. God, thank you for answering it. How about this one? Thank you for answering it that way. What if the answer was no? Can you still be thankful for his answer? You can be, and you should be. Because whatever answer God gives is guided by his perfect sovereignty and his omnipotence and his divine care. It's guided by who he is. God makes decisions on the basis of who he is, which means those decisions will be best for us. So I should be thankful for God's answers to me and God's answers to my prayer, no matter what the answers are, because they're always favorable, even if we might be a little bit slow to pick up on how. Acknowledge who he is, acknowledge what he's done, acknowledge what you need. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. Now, this is an interesting thing, all right? This is an interesting thing that David asks. What's he say? Be gracious to me. What is grace? Now, I'm using a New Testament definition, but it has Old Testament implications, okay? I'm going to use the New Testament definition because it doesn't vary too much from the Old Testament idea. But what does it mean when God is gracious to us? What's that? Well, actually, mercy and grace have a slightly different nuance. So when it's complex, because when he's being merciful, he is being gracious, and when he's being gracious, he is being merciful. But what's the distinction? Do we know? Withholding and giving, which one is which? Grace is giving, mercy is withholding. Grace is when God gives us what we don't deserve. Mercy is when he withholds from us what we do deserve. And so, what is David saying here? Be gracious to me. What's he asking for? Goodness that apparently he knows he doesn't deserve. And so, David's operation, but think about David's circumstance here. David's being, at this point, he's being faithful to the Lord. He's got a right attitude here. He's submitted to God. If you read Psalm 3 and Psalm 4, remember the same context. He's submitted. It's not like he's in a situation where he's running from God and now he's asking for grace. He's submitting to God and he's still asking for grace because he recognizes whether he's running or whether he's in a perfect relationship with God, what he needs in both circumstances is grace. Because God's good favor, God's good gifting to us is what we always need. And of course, David means in his specific circumstance. So when David says, be gracious to me, what he literally might be referring to is, God, help me not get killed. Be gracious to me and sustain my life. Which, by the way, is always an act of God's grace. The fact that we wake up tomorrow, the fact that our heart beats, the fact that we can get in a car and drive safely sometimes, for some of us that's really a miracle, is always an act of God's grace. And so even in our asking, let's make sure we're putting in more thought than we do sometimes. And I'm right there with you. And so, again, even as we think about our prayer tonight, as we're going to pray in just a few moments, maybe let's acknowledge who we're talking to. And not just use general phrases because we can't think of what else to say. Wouldn't it be an amazing thing if in our prayer we both spoke to God, and during the meditation of our prayer, he spoke to us? That can happen because prayer is a conversation, not a monologue. Secondly, preservation. That was the plea. You said that was really long. They're not all going to be that long. Don't worry. The plea, and secondly, preservation. Verses 2 and 3. O men. Now, who do you think the men are here? O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? Who do you think he's talking to? Or about? What's that? I would say so, and probably his cronies, right? Remember, we got the same context in Psalm 3 and 4. And David has already talked to the bad guys in Psalm 3. How many are my foes rising against me? Verse 1. verse 8, I will not be afraid of the many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. So I would say we're probably talking about the same guys here, the bad guys, the ones after David. How long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Selah. What does Selah mean? You remember from last week? Rest. Yes, it means rest. Probably a musical rest, because remember, these are songs. But contrast. So contrast to what we just saw in verse 2. Let's not remove the thoughts. Know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. So secondly, we see the idea of preservation. God preserves those who are his. There are those who reject him, the men who are the enemies of David here, and obviously these men are seeking after vanity. How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. Now this is such a comforting verse. The Lord hears when I call to him. This is such a comforting verse. In the midst of a world full of turmoil and danger, what does it say about those who are God's? He set apart the godly for himself. What sweet intimacy. This is how God feels about those who are his. This is what God thinks about those who are his. He has set them apart for himself. Now, here's the amazing thing. Before Jesus Christ, were we at peace with God? What's the phrase? What's the theological phrase we used for that? We were at enmity with God. We made ourselves enemies of God. And the other way around, God was enemy with us. Our sin separated us from him. Our sin made us actively fighting against him. Our sin caused us to wage war with him. So in a very real sense, we were all opposed to God before the Spirit of God drew us to salvation so that we believed in the redeeming work of Jesus Christ. And so it's like you can see the transition from one bad demographic group of people to those that God has set apart for himself. Those who are the redeemed, those who are God's, he has set apart for himself. And those who are God's, God protect. He set them apart. And we not only have the idea of protection here, but we actually have the idea of purification as well. What does holiness technically mean? Does someone know? Without sin is an application of holiness. Set apart. Distinct. And so what we have here is not only the idea of protection, but when God calls those out, when he sets those out, sets them apart, he protects them, but he also purifies them. He makes them his own. And when we're God's, we are pure, washed by the water of the word, cleansed by the blood of Christ. Now, obviously, David is thinking Old Testament terms here. He has no idea what God is going to do through his line. Now, that's an amazing thing to think about. That he's writing these words, and from his own heritage, a man's going to come and do this eternally for humanity. Allow sinners, those who are at enmity with God, to be set apart, preserved, and purified by God. The Lord hears when I call to him. Moms, do you remember this? Do you remember this stage in your parentage? Mom. You remember that? Okay. Were you ever a sibling that heard that? Like an older sibling that heard that from a younger sibling all the time? How many of you were that child? Right? Mom. How many of you still are that child? Right? David in the back? Yep, that's good. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't raise his hand. We've all heard that. We have one in that stage right now. Doesn't matter what conversation is going on, she's going to try to make herself a part of it. You don't need to do that to God. God hears you. In fact, He hears your heart before your heart can express itself in words. He knows our thoughts far off. And we feel like we have to do everything we can to get God's attention, to feel like we have to do everything right so that God will honor us, to feel like we have to be perfect so that we can be heard, and maybe if we're just good enough, then God will be good to us. And then when He's not, we go back to Him, and we go back to Him, and go back to Him. Elsewhere in the Psalms, repeatedly, it uses phrases like He inclines His ear. And in the Hebrew, that means He bends down, like someone would do with a child. He gets on our level. When you speak to God, He will hear you. You say, I have a problem. I don't think that's true. There is one way that believers can go unheard by God. I don't want to say unheard, but where that relationship can have some separation. Sin. An active lifestyle of sin it cannot coexist with active Christianity. It can't. And so if you feel like God isn't listening, God doesn't move. God is always there. So the reality is, maybe we've got something going on in our heart. We're the ones who are distant. And so I would encourage you, if you don't feel heard, sometimes it just means that we really need to get back into the Scriptures. We really need to be re-encouraged in church. Sometimes we just get tired spiritually, and that does happen. That happens to everybody. But it doesn't mean God isn't listening. But other times there are legitimately sin issues in our hearts that we're so committed to that it just doesn't even feel like God is there. That's not because He's not. It's not because He isn't where He should be. It's because we're not where we should be. Thirdly, ponder. Ponder. Look with me at verse 4. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your beds and be silent. Be angry? What is he talking about? He just said be angry and do not sin. So apparently you can be angry and not sin. And you're like, yeah, that's the kind of anger I want, right? Because sometimes it feels good to get angry, doesn't it? That's why anger is so destructive. Because we like it too much. It always feels better to blow up or control a situation by clamming up and walking away. It just feels better than doing the right thing. What could he be talking about? Concern? Sure. Yes. Be angry that the situation is happening? Yeah, I would say so. It is possible, though, to be sinfully angry with a situation, right? Do we have examples of positive anger in the Scriptures? What's that? Yeah, Jesus. I mean, that's some anger for you. Tying a rope together and running a bunch of people out, snapping the rope like a whip. I mean, his disciples thought he had lost it. So, what was the concern with that anger? God of my righteousness. Anger that makes us angry at what God hates, angry where God's anger is appropriate anger. Anger that is born out of a righteous perspective, not a selfish perspective. But notice what he says about this anger. Be angry and do not sin. And I think he's actually being very specific. Do not sin with the anger. And you might even have a footnote in your translation. Some translations say, I know I have a translation that says something like agitated, or is there have a different translation that ESV says something different? Tremble, what does it say? It says tremble and do not sin. Interesting. Okay. Stand in awe and do not sin. Okay. Interesting. Hebrew words have different implications depending on the root. Elsewhere in the Old Testament, we have the idea of this being an outburst or an angry emotion. And that's the translation that I think is probably the best because of origin of manuscripts and age of manuscripts. Again, translation differences. I would be really interested to see tremble, though. Who said they had tremble? What translation is that? Interesting. I want to check that out. Anyway, okay. I lost my train of thought now because I'm trying to think of why they did that. Okay, anyway, be angry and do not sin. So the idea is we can have a form of anger that I believe to be righteous. But what does he say we should do with this anger? Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts, on your beds, and be silent. And so what I think David is literally doing here is he's giving us a way to process our circumstances. He's giving us a way to think through our situations because he's literally in a circumstance that he's processing through himself. And he might not be doing this intentionally, but he's certainly giving us a way to think about our circumstances. Ponder in your own hearts and be silent. Selah. Now that just makes it's a perfect spot for a rest. Ponder in your own hearts. Now take a minute. And so here we have the idea of just reflection, meditation. Offer right sacrifices. And fourthly, put your trust in the Lord. This is so simple yet so necessary and so deep, so helpful. Put your trust in the Lord. How does the trust get there? See, that's a weird question. How does the trust get where it is? Don't overthink it. You put it there. Say, well, it's not that easy. I know. But the instruction is that simple. Are your children, or maybe you babysit, or maybe you've seen someone come over to your house and they put something where it's not supposed to be? How many of you don't care if something's in the wrong place? You're just going to put it back. Is that your personality? You're like, all right, we'll just put it back. I'm not like that. Right before this evening happened, my 2-year-old comes in my office and starts moving coasters, and it's like, that's not where it goes, right? Things need to be where things need to be, and leave them there. And if you're going to pick it up, put it back. I'm like that. My wife loves it. No, she's that way too, so we make a good team. Our poor children, it's going to be stressful one day for them. So much of the frustration in our life is us taking our trust, our security, and putting it where it doesn't belong. I need stability, so I'm going to take my trust, and I'm going to put it in my bank account. Bank account fluctuates. That's the thing about a bank account, right? I'm going to take my trust, and I'm going to put it in my relationships. And this person leaves, this person moves, this person lies about me. There's a lot of religious people taking their trust and putting it in the church. And if they do enough things and say enough things, then they're hoping their trust pays off. There's a lot of people putting their trust in the government. There's a lot of people putting their trust in this news station rather than that news station. we take our trust and put it where it doesn't belong, we're always going to be unhappy. Put your trust in the Lord. Take your trust and give it to someone who holds the universe. He can hold your life. It's going to be okay. See, but look at the world. I mean, look what they're saying on the news and in the paper and the notification on my phone, and it's out of control. It's never been out of control ever. Right? There's not 1 millisecond from the beginning of time that's been out of control. God's always had it, and He always will. Put your trust in the Lord. Then after all of this, peace. Peace. Look at me at verse 8. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. This is the only way that we're safe in God is the Lord. And he says something similar to this in verse 5 of Psalm 3. Remember the same context. I lay down and slept and woke again, for the Lord sustained me. The world wants peace. We want peace. The people around us want peace. What does it say? You alone, in Christ alone, my hope is found. In God alone, are we secure? Are we safe? And so similarly to where we're putting our trust, what are we hoping in for our safety? Where are we trying to root ourselves for our safety? God alone makes us secure. We make our plans, and God has better ones for us. We make our schedules, and His timetable for us completely changes them. And sometimes it takes longer than we wish to see why. But this is the outcry, or this is the meditation of a man in distress, of a man who's betrayed, of a man who is literally battling for his life. And in whatever your circumstance is, it's these things that cause us to run to the Lord. These attributes, knowing who He is, what He's done, and what we need. Running to the Lord in prayer. And let's not forget our purpose is to allow this truth and these realities and these truths to inform and comfort and guide us as we pray. So I don't know what your circumstance is. I mean, I know many of your circumstances. But there may be many of you that you are in a circumstance you can't even talk about. Run to passages like this and just get to know God better. And you might not see the circumstance as largely as you see Him. And when we see Him above all, we know our circumstance will be completely taken care of and will be completely taken care of. Because this is the kind of God that we have. Let's pray, and then we'll get into our prayer sheet together. Lord, we're so thankful for these truths, many that we've talked about, just the opportunity to meditate on this passage. Definitely, obviously more of a Bible study time, and that's what we're doing. We're studying the Scriptures so that you can show us where we fall short, and you can help us pray as we should. If this is a prayer time, a prayer meeting, then we need to be better at praying. We need to grow in our prayer. We all do. And so, Lord, I ask that you would cause us to know you. You would cause us to understand your Scriptures. God, make our time now of remembering our church family and lifting them up to you effective. We ask these things through Christ. Amen. All right, well, we are still not quite handing out the prayer sheets because we can't, all right? But come July, we'll be able to hand out everything, and that will obviously make things easier for you. We've emailed it, but so if you have a smartphone, you can pull it up in your email there. If not, then then I will just read it to you. Before we do that, let's just take 1 minute and maybe just have a fellowship time. Stand up, shake somebody. Don't shake someone's hand. Stand up, say hello to somebody, turn around in your pew, say hello to somebody. Let's just take 1 minute and greet one another, and then we'll come back. All right? Stretch your legs a little bit. I know we don't have music, but that's okay. Have a seat. Excellent. Now we got some blood flowing again. All right, well, let's work through the prayer sheet, and then if you have maybe a comment about something that we've said, maybe some information, an update, or if you have something you'd like to add, then let us know. And then what I'm going to do is have I'm going to have two people volunteer to pray. It doesn't have to be men. Two people to volunteer to pray. One for the first half of things here, and then the other for the second half of things here. And then we will hopefully have just a few minutes to pray together at the end. Okay? That is the goal. All right. Special announcement, Ruby May turns 95 on June 24th. We would love to send her a card and show her appreciation for all the birthday anniversary cards. Again, we email out every week. If you'd like to send a card and maybe this has got lost in your email, just call the office. Ruby's doing well. I saw pictures of her Sunday morning, and she seems like she's doing well. She's happy. And so let's continue to be a blessing to her. Just a few announcements. Men's prayer breakfast is this Saturday, June 20th at 7. If you are coming, please make sure you let Pastor Fisher know. He's planning food, so if you want to eat, you need to let him know, okay? So that is this Saturday at 7. We had a sweet time last time, and he's doing a fantastic job, of course, so you won't want to miss that. One more announcement here, very important, very, very important. Teens and teen parents especially. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean you can't also come help, okay? But Pastor Brandon and Alyssa's moving pods will be available to unload tomorrow night at 7. If you'd like to come help unload, that would be a huge blessing to them. I remember when we came, I guess it's 4 years ago, I think there were like 40 people here waiting for our truck. So that was a huge blessing to us. So Pastor Brandon and Alyssa had moving pods rather than a truck. They loaded up these pods, and you know how that works. So they will have some of those to unload tomorrow at 7 o'clock, just from the pod into the ministry house with their direction. So please be available to help with that. I know how much of a blessing that was to us, and when we came. So that's tomorrow at 7. Anyone can help. But I know they would especially love to see teens and teen parents there, okay? All right, so it's just a few more prayer requests. Those were announcements, just a few more prayer requests. Judy Donovan's brother Mo passed away last Tuesday evening. Her address is in this sheet as well. Continue to pray for her. She's taking care of finalization of house sale and power of attorney things, and those things are obviously very complex. So be praying for her. I saw her out working on the flowers before we got here. Got to chat with her a little bit. So be praying for Judy and all of those involved there. Attention, this is bolded. Change of date. Tyler Graff's open house is this Saturday. Nope. Saturday, June 27th. Yeah, see, you're all paying attention now. Saturday, June 27th, from starting at 2. All right, here's the thing. They need you to let them know if you're coming. All right, so pull up a sign that says I'm coming, or text them, or send a messenger pigeon. Somehow let them know that you are coming. All right, we are super disappointed. We're going to be on vacation. We're very sad that we will miss it. We love Tyler deeply, and the Lord has got great plans for him. And so we're so excited for his dedication and obviously just where the Lord has taken him. So anyway, make sure you let them know about the open house there Saturday, June 27th, starting at 2. All right? Of course, our other seniors, we celebrated Jocelyn this past week, but the other ones that we're celebrating coming up, Cami Vivens, Juan Sapero, Kara Klein, and Kyle Van Ice. Kyle's back there. Hey, bud. Cammy's open house will follow the Sunday morning service on July 19th. So you can just hang around and wish her and congratulate her, drop her gift off, and be an encouragement to her right after the service here. And then Kara Klein's open house is Saturday, July 25th from 2 to 6 at their home. And so let's make sure we are faithful to encourage them. We're obviously praising the Lord that Pastor Brandon and Alyssa made it, and I'm sure they're having a great time downstairs already. So excited about them. I told the teenagers Sunday morning, and I really do believe this. This is not like pity party kind of thing. Really do believe this. Pastor Brandon is going to be a better youth pastor than I was. He's just better with teens. He's going to be better at it. And so they're going to do an amazing job, and I can't wait to see how your teens grow under their ministry. We're praying for Nicholas and Lindsay Hanlon. She's due soon. The concern is that the baby is breech. So we're praying that either the baby would turn or that she would have safety during the C-section, which is right now scheduled for June 28th. Okay, so obviously, ideally, the baby turns, but the alternative would be a C-section there on the 28th. So we're praying for Nick and Lindsay. We're praising the Lord that Cindy can have her surgery on the 7th. So we're praying for Cindy. Thankful that all those things worked out there. We're praying for Paul Schweitzer as he goes for cancer treatments in the coming weeks. And so I talked to Kathy Monday, and so we're praying for them and praying for him specifically as he has some treatments coming up. Buford and Margaret Rushing are praising the Lord that their daughter Janet has received a great report from her heart doctor. We're also continuing to pray for the Rushings. Cindy Heron is continuing to feel pain from the sore on her leg, the ulcer on her leg, just as a result of the treatment that she's had, and so continue to pray for her. She's being such a testimony of grace during this time. Make sure we're faithful to pray for her. Stephen Soik's sister Lisa seeking a second opinion on her cancer treatments at the Mayo Clinic, so we're praying for Lisa and doctor's wisdom there. Praying for our shut-ins as always. We're praying for the Voglers. He has an appointment on July 8th to check the results of his heart monitor, and so we're praying that all things continue to work out well. We're praising the Lord that Sandy's mom's blood pressure is doing better, so we're rejoicing in that. We're thankful for continued improvement there. All right, so here's what we are going to do. I'm actually going to change my system. I said we were going to just split the page in half, but we're not going to do that, all right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask for someone to pray for the missionaries on the back, so starting underneath the birthdays and anniversaries there. Oh, you don't have this, do you? I just now realized that. I'm going to pray for these, okay? Ordinarily, we'd hand this out, but I've said multiple times that we're not handing this out, so you don't have this in your hands. So I will pray for these, all right? But any updated prayer requests before I pray? Yes. Okay. 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 Will do. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So Diane's sister Linda. Okay. Yeah. He shared it. So we're praising the Lord for that. That's awesome. He was just making sure we got it. I appreciate it. Maybe he has another prayer. We would take it if he does. All right. A few more things here. J.D. Jones is having pain, and we're praying for him. His brother has his brother has a brain bleed, but is now out of ICU and is in rehab. So let's pray for J.D. and his brother. Also with J.D., they are checking with his cancer doctor to make sure everything is okay. We're praying for our neighbor. I don't know if you know Yuko, but she's Diane's neighbor. We're praying for her. She has a skin condition that is, I believe it's also an autoimmune problem that is causing her intense pain and difficulty. So keep those things in mind. Actually, Pastor Fisher, would you mind coming up and praying in just a minute? He didn't know he was going to do that. So he's going to pray in just a minute. So you pray for what's on here. And then after that, we are going to split up for just a few minutes and pray together. Okay, I would encourage you just to kind of turn around in your pew. That way you're not up in people's faces, unless it's your spouse. We'll allow that. So after Pastor Fisher's done, we're going to break into groups. Just turn around in your pew, groups of 5 or 6, and we'll pray together, all right? Yeah, if you want. Lord, thank you for Brandon and Elizabeth. It's a miracle from God. Man and woman like this that love teenagers, love Jesus, love people, that loves our Lord, be with the Hamlins, Lord, help them, and Lord, help each of those. Be Paul Schweitzer, Lord, help us to Brandon also, encourage him, and all of these that are shut-ins, Lord. It's good to hear the report from the Russians. Lord, this Ken Todd and not being on the transplant list is wonderful. Lord, that is a miracle. Thank you for answering that prayer. Answer Cindy's prayer. Lord, and Steve's sister, Lord, give answers there. And all of our shut-ins, help us to pick one of them, Lord, and love on the Voglers, Sandy Davis' mom, Lord. Lord, be with our missionaries, help us not forget them, Lord. They are in this pandemic also globally, and it's hitting some of the third world countries terribly. Lord, we pray for them. Lord, we pray for our country. We don't even know how to pray. We don't have enough information. But we see evil people pushing evil in our country, and we don't like it. Lord, we're bringing it to you, and we believe that you know what's going on, and you are God, and we're going to trust you, and we're going to rejoice and joy in it, because if everything goes bad, you'll come first. And Lord, we're looking for you. Lord, bless our Sunday services.
Lord, bless our Father's Day events, bless Sunday school. Lord, thank you for opening up. It's wonderful to be back to church full time. And Lord, bless every family that's here tonight. Good crowd, bunch of teenagers. Lord, bless the youth ministry of the Brandons. And Lord, just bless them. Bless them. Lord, help each of us walk and talk with you daily and have God talk to us from the Bible and to thrill our hearts, grow our faith, and realize that we don't need to fret, we don't need to worry, we don't need to be all upset and anxious. Help us just simply, as Pastor Kyle said tonight from me, to trust the Lord. And it's wonderful to have peace and rest with all of that. And you have grace and mercy. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, bless Pastor Kyle and your family as they get some rest and relaxation. They deserve it. Lord, bless them in this Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Pastor Kyle.
All right, I would just scoot over in pews and turn around and optimize space there, and we have about 10 minutes. So if, as we're praying, if someone's uncomfortable praying in a group, that's okay. Don't make them feel bad. Just keep going, all right? The next person can just pray. We don't want to put anybody out. We don't want to discourage prayer, all right? So let's pray.